The perfect plan. On August 28, 2003, a seemingly ordinary day in Erie, Pennsylvania, Brian Wells, a 46-year-old pizza delivery man, was called to deliver two pizzas to a remote location near a television transmission tower. Little did he know that this simple task would be the start of one of the most shocking and bizarre criminal plots in American history. Upon arriving at the location, Wells was ambushed by a group of conspirators. They placed a heavy metal collar bomb around his neck and handed him a series of handwritten instructions. These instructions detailed a series of tasks he needed to complete, starting with robbing a local PNC bank, and promised that if he followed them precisely, he would be able to defuse the bomb. Fearful for his life, Wells had no choice but to comply. With the bomb strapped around his neck, Wells drove to the bank. He entered calmly, carrying a note that demanded $250,000 in cash. The bank teller, terrified by the threat, handed over $8,000, far less than what had been demanded. Despite the reduced amount, Wells appeared outwardly composed as he walked out of the bank, but his situation was anything but stable. The ticking of the bomb around his neck was a constant reminder that he was racing against time. Wells was stopped by the police shortly after leaving the bank. He was calm but pleaded with officers, showing them the bomb and explaining that he was forced to rob the bank under duress. He sat on the pavement as law enforcement, unsure of the validity of his claims, called in the bomb squad. However, the situation quickly spiraled out of control. Before the bomb squad could arrive, the collar device began to beep faster, and without warning, it detonated, killing Wells instantly. The shocking scene left law enforcement and the public stunned. Who had orchestrated such a twisted and cruel plan? Brian Wells was seen as both a victim and possibly an accomplice in what seemed like a meticulously planned heist. The brutal nature of the crime was clear, but the mastermind behind it remained a mystery. The mastermind's web, after Brian Wells' tragic death during the bomb explosion, authorities were left with more questions than answers. The disturbing nature of the crime, coupled with the bizarre scavenger hunt instructions, pointed to a highly calculated plan. Investigators quickly realized they were dealing with something far more complex than a simple bank robbery. The question remained, who was behind it? The first significant clue emerged when authorities began to focus on Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong, a local woman with a history of erratic behavior and criminal activity. Marjorie was intelligent but deeply troubled, known for her manipulative tendencies and past involvement in suspicious deaths. She was no stranger to the legal system, having been implicated in the death of at least two boyfriends under suspicious circumstances. To those who knew her, she was cunning, paranoid, and always scheming. The investigation into Marjorie revealed a chilling truth. The bank heist was part of a much larger, more sinister plan. Marjorie, it appeared, had orchestrated the entire scheme in a bid to obtain money for a murder-for-hire plot. The intended victim? Her own father. Marjorie believed she was entitled to her father's fortune and wanted to eliminate him to gain access to it. To fund her plan, she devised the idea of robbing a bank, using Brian Wells as a pawn. But Marjorie wasn't acting alone. She had a small circle of accomplices, including Kenneth Barnes, a local handyman and drug dealer, and William Bill Rothstein, a former boyfriend of hers who lived near the site where Wells had been ambushed. Rothstein, a highly intelligent but eccentric man, played a critical role in the plot. He provided the space to assemble the collar bomb and helped Marjorie craft the scavenger hunt instructions that led Wells to his death. As law enforcement delved deeper, they uncovered a network of conspirators, each drawn into the heist by greed and fear of Marjorie's manipulation. The cruelty of the plan was slowly revealed. Wells had never been meant to survive. The collar bomb was designed to be inescapable, and the scavenger hunt was nothing more than a sadistic game meant to end in his death. The realization that Brian Wells was an unwilling participant and victim of this deadly web was horrifying. Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong had spun a plot of greed, manipulation, and murder, and now the authorities were closing in on her, the inner circle of chaos. As the investigation into the bank heist deepened, it became clear that Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong hadn't acted alone. The plot to rob the bank and murder Brian Wells was the result of a twisted conspiracy involving several people, each playing a critical role in the crime. Kenneth Barnes, a drug dealer and friend of Marjorie, became a central figure in the plot. Desperate for money to fund his drug habit, Barnes was easily lured into the scheme with the promise of a cut of the robbery's proceeds. He was the one who helped devise the overall plan, and he later revealed that the primary motive for the heist was to fund Marjorie's murder-for-hire plot. She intended to use the money to hire someone to kill her father, believing she would inherit his fortune once he was dead. Another key player was William "Bill" Rothstein, a former boyfriend of Marjorie's, who lived near the location where Brian Wells had been ambushed and fitted with the collar bomb. Rothstein was a highly intelligent man, though eccentric and secretive. He provided the space where the collar bomb was built and helped design the scavenger hunt that Wells was forced to follow. Although Rothstein claimed he had only minimal involvement, investigators soon uncovered his deeper role in the conspiracy. Rothstein, like Marjorie, had a history of suspicious behavior. Shortly after Wells's death, Rothstein had called the police to report the body of a man, James Roden, in his freezer. Roden had been Marjorie's boyfriend, and Rothstein claimed she had killed him in a fit of rage. He had supposedly agreed to help her hide the body out of fear, but it was later revealed that Roden's murder was directly tied to the bank heist. He had known too much and became a liability to Marjorie and the others. As the pieces of the puzzle came together, it became evident that the conspirators had created a deadly game with no regard for human life. The collar bomb was designed to kill Brian Wells from the start. The scavenger hunt was merely a cruel ruse. Wells, an innocent pizza delivery man, had been used as a pawn in a plan driven by greed and manipulation. With Kenneth Barnes now cooperating with investigators and Rothstein dead from cancer before he could fully be prosecuted, the circle of chaos began to unravel, revealing Marjorie as the mastermind behind it all, the fall of the evil genius. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong was the mastermind behind the diabolical bank heist and the brutal death of Brian Wells. By this point, law enforcement had gathered enough evidence to charge her. But Marjorie, ever manipulative, tried to use her mental health issues to avoid accountability. She had a history of mental illness and had spent time in psychiatric institutions. But investigators believed she was far more cunning than mentally unstable. During her trial, Marjorie's erratic behavior only intensified. She claimed she was innocent, asserting that others were framing her, including Kenneth Barnes, who had turned on her to save himself. But the evidence was overwhelming. Barnes, in exchange for a reduced sentence, testified in detail about Marjorie's role in the heist, confirming that she had come up with the entire plot to fund her father's murder. He revealed that she had recruited him and William Rothstein, promising them a share of the robbery's proceeds. Marjorie's strategy was to delay and manipulate at every turn. She insisted on representing herself, demanded delays, and ranted about conspiracies. But the jury saw through her ploys. They were presented with undeniable evidence: the bomb-making materials found in Rothstein's house, the detailed instructions that were meant to lead Brian Wells on a doomed scavenger hunt, and the testimonies of her co-conspirators. Rothstein's involvement had also become clear before his death. While Rothstein died of cancer before standing trial, his role in helping Marjorie build the collar bomb and orchestrate the heist was confirmed through forensic evidence and statements from Barnes. He had been a key player, using his home as a base for their deadly plan. His death prevented a full prosecution, but his involvement painted a complete picture of the cruel plot. In 2010, Marjorie was found guilty of armed bank robbery, conspiracy, and the use of a destructive device in a crime of violence. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Even behind bars, she continued to claim she had been set up, but the world saw her for what she was: a highly intelligent yet deeply disturbed criminal who reveled in manipulation and control. The case left a lasting scar on the town of Erie. Brian Wells, an innocent victim caught in a sinister game, had been used as a pawn in a scheme far more twisted than anyone could have imagined. Marjorie Diehl-Armstrong's legacy would forever be remembered as one of cold-blooded greed and calculated evil, cementing her place as America's true evil genius.